I shall awake before the dawn does, and from the mountain top I shall look down and see the town asleep, wrapped in a winter Kantha. Thus wrote the famous Bengali poet Nazrul, and the words of a Baul song lament: the friend of the fakirs is the sky, the friend of the earth is the Kantha. When these fakirs die, where will their graves lie? 3 hours outside the capital city of Bengal, Kolkata, lies Birbhum, made world-renowned by the poet Rabindranath Tagore, who founded Vishwa Bharati, the centre for the arts that has drawn some of the world's best minds since the 1920s. Today known more popularly as Shantiniketan, the abode of peace. This is where the seeds of revival for an extraordinary style of embroidery were laid many decades ago. Frugality has always been part of the Indian ethos, and from this was born the Kantha, literally rags in Sanskrit. Not wanting to discard old and worn saris and dhotis, women would layer and stitch these together to make soft coverings for babies. They would pull out the coloured threads from the borders and use these to patch and embroider the layers together. The cloth was cut up, patched, quilted and embroidered. The space was so divided as to form a multitude of squares, triangles or circles. The kanthas were then used in homes for wraps and folded as bags. By the early 19th century, kanthas had mostly fallen out of use and may have disappeared completely, but for the efforts of some women, led by Gurudev Tagore's daughter-in-law Pratimadi, to find a new market for them. As a result, the kantha became a fashionable textile. In rural Bengal, hundreds of women now work in collectives overseen by a supervisor, producing beautiful kanthas for contemporary wear and use. The work usually begins with a buyer from a city placing an order. The specific design is then traced and translated onto the fabric, which today might be anything from cotton to georgette to silk or chiffon. The chief stitches used are the darning stitch, the satin stitch, the loop stitch, and for the outlines, the stem stitch and the split stitch. When the stitches are long, they are broken on the reverse side by one or more short stitches, giving the dotted look to kantha. A probable invention of the Kantha embroiderers was the stitch version of modelling with a paint and brush and painting. The effect of modelling is given by producing closely spaced rows of stitches running parallel to the outline of a figure. This brings about a uniformity of look. Towards the middle of the motif, the stitches change in density and direction, creating areas that were set apart from others. The most traditional design in Kantha was the mandala, usually represented as 1,000 or 100-petaled lotus. This old design, now reinterpreted in many ways, represents the Indian philosophical concept of the interconnection and unity of the animal and spiritual worlds. Traditionally, kanthas for different uses were called different names. The lep kantha was a winter covering for the body. Its modern version is the stole. The Sujni Kantha used to be a ceremonial wrap and was heavily embroidered and used to seat honoured guests. Today, these large kanthas are used as bed covers or wall hangings. The Baitan Kantha was a 3-foot by 3-foot square used to wrap up and bundle things, books, old clothes. It was also used to throw over things. It used to have human or animal figures in the border and an elaborate centre. Today these are used as table covers or wall hangings. The Durjani Kantha is also a square piece with borders all around and a lotus in the center. It is folded from 3 corners to make a traditional bag. The Arshalita Kantha, literally the mirror wrap, was in fact used to keep mirrors or combs. Today's versions also keep mobile phones. The rectangular pouch usually has a wide border on all 4 sides with floral motifs. Perhaps the greatest difference between the traditional and contemporary kanthas is the fact that today the kantha has become a style and a stitch and is rarely layered with several layers. The saris, curtain material, wraps and dress material, the stoles and shawls are all single layers of cloth. The only products where the layering still exists are the thicker bed covers and some shawls. The entire symbolism of the kantha is about making whole again that which is fragmented or broken. In Hinduism, the universe is made up of the warp and the weft, and thus becomes important the wholeness. It is normally seen to be the role of the woman to make things whole again, and it was right, therefore, that it was the woman who embroidered her story, her dreams and her world onto kanthas. The revival in kanthas has given thousands of women the power to make economic sense of their lives in Bengal. With the possibilities that this form of embroidery offers in terms of motifs, colors, density and texture, its use for contemporary tastes is infinite.